Black actors, just like you, have experienced the trauma of being reduced, erased, and replaced in the movies. If I am going to revolutionize this industry, I had to get to the root of the problem. It was time for me to dismantle the white narrative industrial complex.
And so yeah, I saw recently you were in Cannes celebrating the series. How, first of all, was that your very first trip to Cannes ever? And how was the experience?
I've actually been before, but just like as a tourist, not, to attend any of the festivals out there. So this is my first time being there as like a participant in the Cannes Series International Film Festival, or Cannes Series International Festival. And it was spectacular. It was amazing. It was wonderful to see our work on screen out there. It was amazing to walk the pink carpet under palm trees and to get to talk to people about the show. I wasn't sure how an audience in France would take it, but people totally got it, responded to it, wanted to see more of it. It was pretty magical. It was really, really amazing.
Mm-hmm. And that's amazing because we kind of hear that Canada or that the world is ready for Canadian content. So it's kind of cool to, and people always think, people may not understand Canada, may not understand the slang. So it's cool to see like something that is, very distinctly Toronto, very distinctly Black, kind of translated like that to a different audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think, they always say it's this strange truth that when you are more specific, you are more universal. And I think, the specificity of the project makes it special, makes it something that they're like, this is Canada. Even when I met people, they were like, you're not who I would think would be representing Canada. And so it's, bringing a sort of new perspective of Canada to them. But, there's also the themes of the show are something that I think transcend our borders. And it's these stereotypes, tropes, just the idea of token Black characters is something that unfortunately exists in many places around the world. And so there was a lot of folks that really related to it, people from places like Australia. Like there's a crew from Australia that really resonated with it. There's this Dutch crew that really resonated with it. So yeah, it was really amazing to see not just a French audience, but an international audience really connect to the material.
Mm-hmm. Was there anybody you saw in Cannes that you're like, holy crap, like, did you have those moments where you're like, oh shoot, there's like Brad Pitt or I don't know, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, there's no Brad Pitt. Yeah. And I feel like because of my career, I try not to get too crazy, but I'm actually like a really big nerdy fan of a television show called Sex Education, which is on Netflix.
Oh, I love that show.
I love it too.
Love it.
One of our jury members was one of the cast members of Sex Education. And so like after they were done, making their decisions, so I wasn't a weirdo while they were making the decisions. Once it was over, I went up to her and I was just like, I just have to tell you, like, I'm a bit obsessed. Like, I love this show so much. And there was a bunch of folks from Sex Education there. And it's also not like a North American show. It's a British show. And so I feel like I don't feel the buzz of that show as much here. So when I saw them, I was like, I just have to express it in all the ways because I hope that you guys know you're so loved across the ocean as well too. So yeah.
And a completely aside, because Simone Ashley from Sex Education is in Bridgerton. Did you get into Bridgerton at all?
I might have watched it about 4 times in addition to the 2 times that I watched at home while I was in Cannes. I'm obsessed with Bridgerton. It's like everyone's like, let's talk about Revenge of the Black Bestfriend. I'm like, yes, thank you. Also, would you mind slipping in a little Bridgerton? Because I've been thinking about it so much. So yeah, I love it.
And now, we're going to get into talking about Revenge of the Black Bestfriend, but Canadian Screen Awards, big win, best writing in a web program, best writing in a web program or series for The Death News. You're also nominated for best host, talk show, and entertainment.
I won for both.
You won for both?
Not to flex, but I did win for both.
Oh, shoot. My bad. We got to update that. Okay, yes. So 2-time Canadian Screen Award winner. So yeah, how did that feel? Like walking away with 2 trophies?
Yeah, I mean, it was very surreal. The awards were virtual this year, so unfortunately I didn't get to like physically pick up the trophies and walk. But the crazy thing about them being virtual is that I experienced it in Cannes. I was in Cannes. It was 3:30 in the morning, and because of the time difference, and so the awards were being announced like super late at night in Cannes, and so it just felt very surreal and incredible. To win for The Death News was really moving because I was pregnant when I wrote it. It was 2020. Like the world felt really scary and unpredictable. And I, just had this story in my mind of like a meditation on if you could plan what your last words to the world would be, what would that look like? And so it was a weird choice of a project to work on while trying to bring life into the world. But it was very personal and it was very intimate. And it was such a wonderful thing to get to collaborate with my friend Charles Officer, to get to finally work with Lavelle Adams-Gray, who's an actor that I've been kind of stalking because I think he's so talented and just such a wonderful gift to the screen and the stage. And so for us all to like win for that particular project, because Charles won for Best Direction and Lavelle won for Best Lead Performance, felt amazing. And then for the whole 21 Black Futures to win, it was just beautiful. And then for Best Host, again, that was for a season that was filmed in 2020. It was our last season. I was heavily pregnant. It was a season where we kind of broke our formula and created a sort of new way of telling the stories about artists across Canada. Exhibitionist is the show that introduced me to television in this industry, to this career. So it has a very special place in my heart. The team that I make it with, I love so much. We've never won a Canadian Screen Award before. So even though it's for Best Host, I feel like it's for the entire show and for that entire team and the work that we did together. So that's really, really special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find the Canadian Screen Awards, like for me, if there's just a sense of prestige to it, because it's like, I always say for myself, like I'd rather actually win a Canadian Screen Award than an Oscar. Like for me, personally, like I personally, like I feel like it just, to be recognized in your own country by your own peers, like I feel like it feels very special. So, so yeah, let's get into Revenge of the Black Bestfriend. Now, for me, like watching it, it was like I was like, I need to look like the mind or the minds behind that. It was like I've never seen anything like that before on Canadian television, and even just when you think about American television, British television, like the idea behind it, like I've never seen anything like that before. Like it feels like it's kind of in its own like its own lane, its own genre. Like where did the whole idea come from for this project?
Yeah, I mean the sort of the kernel of the idea came from an experience I was having like a few years back. I just started rewatching like a lot of the shows and movies that I grew up loving, and I just kind of wanted to go back to that feeling and just feel comforted when there was probably a time when the world was very depressing, as it seems to constantly be. And so I just wanted that like comfort viewing. And so I went back and rewatched a bunch of stuff, and then I kind of had a rude awakening when I realized that the Black characters in those shows and movies that I had remembered as being way more important were not that important, actually. Like they were very marginal. They didn't have a lot of lines. They often didn't have last names or love interests or parents or anything. And so I just remember feeling really disappointed, and and that feeling of disappointment stayed with me, and I felt like I wanted to do something with the disappointment. So the first iteration of the idea was a sort of support group for all of the Black actors that get cast in these roles. But it was actually for the characters themselves, a support group for them to realize their leading potential. But then this sketch comedy show called The Astronomy Club came out on Netflix, and they actually did the exact thing. Like they did a support group for these token Black characters, and I saw it and I was like, oh my God, that is my idea happening, which means it's really not my idea. It's just part of the zeitgeist. Like everyone is sort of thinking about these things. But it pushed me to think about it in a different way. So for a minute, I thought the whole idea was dead, but then it pushed me to just push it differently. And so I started thinking about who was the person that was leading the support group, and maybe she could be the way that we enter into this. And pretty early on, I knew I wanted to create something where every single episode would be an adventure into a new world and an adventure into a new stereotype. And it was very hard to pitch and to explain to people, because as you said, like, I don't think there's a lot of things out there that really look like this. But luckily I was able to find the right collaborators who totally got the idea and were able to like jump on board and to expand on it even more. And, that's when we put together the writer's room. That's when Motion came on board, Seneca Era and Kiwi Lynch. And I really credit them for helping to open up the world even more and to build it and for it to become even more real. Mm-hmm.
Now, do you feel like when it comes to Black characters in film and television, do you feel like, because obviously post George Floyd, people became more conscious of just the Black experience. Do you feel like things improved when it comes to Black characters on screen after, the past few years and what Black people have gone through? Or you feel like it's kind of just like same old?
I think there's been a shift happening even prior to, the horrific murder of George Floyd. Like, I think when I first pitched this show, it was in January of 2018. And I don't know that Insecure, I can't remember the exact years of Insecure, but I feel like Insecure was either just starting or hadn't started yet. And so like between then and like Insecure was ending is like the creation of the show. And I think Insecure changed the game in a lot of ways. I don't know if Atlanta was out yet, but like, these kind of tentpole shows, Insecure, Atlanta. For me, there's a show called Random Acts of Flyness on HBO that really shifted my understanding of what was possible on television because it broke every single rule. So movies like Sorry to Bother You, Get Out, like all of these things, like 2018. All of those things really shifted in my mind what was possible, and they were all done by Black creators who were pushing the boundaries of not only the kinds of characters that were on screen, but the kind of storytelling that we get to see. It wasn't a sitcom, it wasn't a drama, it was something in between. From Sorry to Bother You, it was something very surreal. With Get Out, there's like a menace and a horror to it. So yeah, all of these became like my reference points, and I utilized all of those projects to help explain the kind of tone and world that I wanted to build every time I brought on a new collaborator. So I think definitely things have shifted because I was able to take most of my primary inspiration from things created by Black creators that have been successful in the last few years. So there's definitely a shift. However, all of those references that I named are from south of the border. They're not from Canada. Yes. So I think the shift here is a lot slower. I think there's some really interesting and amazing stuff happening, particularly in the last year or two. Everything from, Utopia Falls to The Porter to Next Stop to Scarborough winning Best Feature Film at the Canadian Screen Awards this year. I think there's a lot of really beautiful things happening that is really exciting to see. And I hope that it's not a moment. I hope that it is indicative of like an actual structural shift in the kind of stories that we get to see on our screens.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I hope so as well. So let's talk about Eleni, because she's the star. Like what made you want to cast her in that role? Like when you first were developing the character, was she did you have her in mind? Like what was the whole kind of story behind just choosing her to kind of be in that lead role?
Yeah, to be honest, we didn't have anyone specific in mind when we first created Dr. Tony Shakur, and we sort of did a call out for a lot of different actors. We knew that we wanted somebody who wasn't young, like someone who was a little bit older, who has like life experience and can speak with that sense of authority and can command that space in that way. And then from there it was sort of like abstract. I wasn't sure exactly, but as soon as I saw Olenike's name pop up, I was like, oh my God, of course, because I knew her, I was familiar with her. And I was like, this is who it's supposed to be like. And now it was just about praying that our schedules aligned. And we actually shifted our entire production schedule for her. So we first, got her in for a pitch video that we created to get funding. So we at first hired her to help make that pitch video. And so really, Olunike is the reason why anything happened. Like that pitch video is the reason why we got funded. It was the reason why a lot of folks wanted to join the production in the first place. They'd see the video and they were like, oh, I get what you're trying to do here. And I love this actor. I want to work with them. And so to me, it was like not going to happen if we couldn't get her for the actual show. And so, yeah, we pushed everything because she's very busy, as you can see, with like the Porter and so much other stuff on her going on. She's exploding, which is wonderful. But yeah, I was like, whatever we need to do to make it happen with you, we will. And she was so passionate about the project from the very beginning, and made it clear to her agents that this was a priority for her as well too, which is a little bit crazy because it's a digital series. It's not like primetime television, so her agents, particularly her agents in the States, were probably like, what are you talking about? You want to do a web series right now? We got NBC calling, we have BT Plus calling. But she was really clear and from the very beginning that because of the subject matter, because of the content, because of the folks behind it, like she really wanted to be a part of it. I'm so grateful to her for that.
Mm-hmm. And I saw you even had Tyrone Edwards in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it was just nice. It was just nice to see, especially because he was one of the people in Canada that was more like, when the whole anti-Black racism and the murder of George Floyd, he was one of the, especially for the men. I think he was like, okay, he kind of gave voice to a lot of us, just specifically as Black men in Canada, as we were kind of going through those things. And just, it was very refreshing to see him just kind of make that cameo. It was like, what was that like, just kind of having him be involved?
It was great. Tyrone and I have been friends for a really long time. We used to work together at the Remix Project way back in the day. And we even knew each other back when we lived in the same hood around Weston Road and stuff. So, I'm so thankful that when I called him up and I was like, hey, would you be down to do this? Because we wrote the script with his name in it and everything. We always wanted it to be him. He was super down and super excited about it. And it was just about figuring again out with his incredibly busy schedule how we could get him into the studio to do it. But yeah, he was just such a beautiful presence on set as well too, like the most humble, gracious person, like just made everyone so comfortable and was so enthusiastic about the story and everything. So yeah, I mean, I feel very lucky to call him one of my friends. And as you said, we had his name in the script before 2020 happened, and before he had that moment on air, and so I think just having him on after that made, because in my mind Tyrone has always been that person, because I know him as somebody who's been working in community and supporting young people forever, but when he did that very public sort of statement, I think that it really helped to reshape his public persona for a lot of folks. And so having him on our set and a part of the show with that, in conjunction with that, I think just worked out really nicely.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we go, and I talk specifically about the character of, I'm going to kind of go back to Eleni and the character of just Dr. Tony Shakur. Like, what was the influence for that character? Like, did you kind of draw any inspirations from anywhere for that character?
Yeah, for sure. From the beginning, I always said I wanted to create a character that was somewhere between Jan Van Zan and Dr. Drew. These sort of like celebrity self-help gurus who do these very public counseling sessions with people that are interesting and sometimes really powerful, but can also feel really problematic at the same time. And sometimes there's a certain degree of exploitativeness that can be a part of it as well too. And so those two sort of names were always sort of central. And then when we started to build her up and, what is it that she does and how does she do her work, and figure out that she's a talk show host, then, of course, Oprah comes to mind, and Tyra Banks and Ellen and all of these folks that had these, very popular daytime talk shows. So there's a few influences that have really helped to shape her. And then the last one I would say is myself. I think she couldn't be real until I tapped into what I'm grappling with and what I'm dealing with and the things that I have questions about. And so that's, really came, I think, full circle in the final episode of the season when the flip happens and Tony is kind of put under the spotlight and is questioned about her motivations. And I think that episode in particular, I was really drawing from like my own stuff there. So yeah, that's really, where she comes from.
Mm-hmm. I really liked that last episode because I feel like it was so, I mean, I related to a little bit, like just in a sense of like, you feeling like the whole cancel culture and it felt, feeling like the whole world is against her. And then, oh, here comes an opportunity. I was like, oh my gosh, like I related a little bit to that. Was there any specific message about cancel culture you're kind of trying to get out there at all? Or it was just kind of like a part of the story?
I mean, I think it was less about cancel culture and more just about Dr. Tony Shakur being forced to confront an important question, which is what happens when a social justice issue becomes your brand. But the only way that Tony would ever confront that question is by something as powerful as cancellation on Black Twitter. Like if one person asked her that question or asked her those questions, she wouldn't care. But it was like the magnitude of this, potential cancellation that forces her to confront these issues. And I think there's something really powerful about this particular moment where folks have to be accountable to audiences and to the public in a way that they never had to be before. There's some challenges alongside it. And I think there's a lot of conversation to be had around so-called cancel culture. But again, the one thing that I will say that we wanted to say about cancel culture was the fact that she never got canceled. She, at the end, she gets this call from one of these sort of gatekeepers who say, who cares about what Black Twitter has to say? And I think that that's also very real too, that, these sort of social the social canceling that can happen to people on social media doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be any material repercussions for those that are in power. So that was like a little sort of perspective on cancel culture that we wanted to put in there. But the most important question was not about the canceling. It was about the question that she has to confront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once again, yeah, I loved that episode. I mean, I got something out of it. I learned something out of it. So that was really cool. So what's next for you? Like, do you have, like obviously you had this. Is there anything else you kind of have coming up that you just want to, tell us about, or that you can tell us about? Because sometimes, things might be on the hush hush.
I don't think I have anything that I can tell anybody about. I'm definitely
just more award-winning stuff.
We'll see. This might have been the peak, but hopefully not. I just want to keep going. I loved this experience so much. Like I haven't had a project that I've had this much fun on, and that I enjoyed doing this much, and I learned so much as well too. I also want to just give like big shout out to Motion specifically for like helping to guide me through this like new role of like screenwriting and the transition to this particular type of screenwriting. She was really instrumental in supporting the development of my writing in that regard. But yeah, it's just been such a wonderful experience, and I really felt like I was able to like lock into something around my purpose by working on this, and I would just want to keep going.
Mm-hmm. And what was that? Oh, yes. So yeah, there's a lot of content creators out there, young Black content creators, even some who are older. Like I hear like people in Calgary and Ottawa and Montreal, everyone's talking about wanting to create Black content. People of all different ages. Do you have any advice like for the Black content creator that's kind of maybe looking to do what you've been doing lately?
I'd say don't think about it as content. I think that's really hard. I think when you think about it as content, it becomes a question of like mass, like how much you're going to do and how often you're putting it out. And that's, if you're interested in doing something like this, I don't think that's the question at all. I think the most important question is, what's the story you want to tell? What are the stories that you want to tell, and who do you want to tell them for? And I think locking into a strong story is hard enough. Like, don't worry about how much of it you're going to put out there. I think just locking into the story that you want to tell and then telling it well is like the key. So yeah, if you want to be a storyteller, I think, find inspiration anywhere. Like I said, I found it from binge watching like a bunch of random old TV shows. It can come from literally anywhere. Be open to all the ideas, and then also be patient. Sometimes it takes really long. Like I said, I pitched this in 2018. It didn't come out until 2022. Like, it's been a bit of a journey to get here. But I think it also came out exactly when it was supposed to. So yeah, that's
cool. And for people that want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
At Amanda.
If you want to be found, that's the other thing.
I don't really understand the people that are on social media like are private. Like, I guess if you want to be family. Yeah. At Amanda_Parris, like the city France, but with 2 R's on Twitter and Instagram.